Well, welcome to Brain Chat number 3. Again, we have Dr. Janani Dhinakaran, PhD in neuropsychology. How you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Doing just fine. I'm Dr. Stephen Cain, president of the Whole Brain Health Initiative. Our theme for today will be exercise and nutrition as they play in to brain health. So when it comes to exercise, nutrition, and how it plays into brain health as a whole, I guess before we get into any particular details, or any just kind of big picture, high level things you feel the general public should think about when it comes to these two topics?
There are people who are happy never to exercise and just change things in their diet. And then there are people who are happy never to change anything in their diet and just make all changes with exercise. But what they tend not to realize is that they work together. And what you can get when they work together is synergistic. So it's more than the sum of the two parts.
The synergy between the two of them. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. For me, I feel like just to maintain a big picture, high level perspective on it. I think people just immediately want to delve deep, like they hear nutrition, they go, oh, what supplement? What's this one, small, tiny little piece of the puzzle that could be missing that's gonna, really have my just brain performing so much better, boost my fitness. And when really it's, take a big step back. Let's look at this whole big picture puzzle here, and just as a whole, the fruits and the vegetables, the anti-inflammatory, components. How much of that are you eating? How many healthy fats are you eating? How much protein are you eating? And similar thing with exercise. I think people do a reasonably okay job with nutrition some of the time, but I feel like majority of the time people do not think about exercise with nearly as much analysis as they should. People are aware of the macros for their nutrients, how the ratio of protein to fats to carbohydrates, but most people don't talk about the ratio of aerobic exercise to strength training to stretching, and they don't really think about that volume and big picture, how they can tailor that to suit their own needs. So that would be my starting point, is to think big picture about it, to really try to step back and glance at the whole thing before you start delving into one tiny piece of the puzzle. So one of the things that we want to talk about, especially as our organization does a lot to cater towards seniors, is exercise kind of throughout the years. How would you encourage people to think about different types of movement, different types of exercises that can be beneficial for different people, different demographics at different age stages throughout their lives?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this more recently because earlier this year I gave a talk on menopause, and it just brought home to me how many women in my age group really need to act now so that they have to work less intensely in the future. So bone health being one of those issues that, like, you cannot absorb calcium when you've hit menopause the way that you can before. So I think in childhood, it's very simple and easy. So long as you're getting all the nutrients, you're also going out and playing enough. You don't really need to set aside separate time for exercise because you're naturally physically active. There's a lot of playtime. So if you have the ability, if you have trees to climb and stuff to, like, what are those bars to hang off and do monkey bars and things, you're gonna develop pretty well, right? I think it's only after people get into their jobs in their 20s and 30s, people start to not move as much as they used to, and they also let go of playing. Many people let go of playing. They're not meeting their friends over, like, they're not playing soccer. Maybe they're coaching soccer or they're watching soccer, but they're not playing. So I think that demographic really needs to pay attention to movement and then, like, make separate time out for exercise. So general physical activity needs to be high also, but I think there is a special space for specific exercise that is oriented towards certain goals. So there's this really cool book called Outlive. Many of you may have heard of it. I think, Steve, we talked about it last year. He starts with exercise because he actually thinks of it as you said, people generally don't think about exercise the same way as they think about food in that much detail. And he talks about the various kinds. And what you would have to do now to build your strength in a way that, given how muscles kind of atrophy over age, so do you want to lift your great grandchildren and go for a walk and or take a hike or any of these things that you want to be able to do in your 90s, even if it's not as intense as like going for a hike? Do you want to just be able to go up and down steps by yourself without like assistance? So you have to kind of calculate backwards to what is the muscle strength you need in your 30s or your 40s to be able to achieve that strength at that age. We need to work now to help ourselves in the future. And the more we do earlier, the better our gains are in the future. That's just the way I look at it. What about you?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Just the way our hormones are naturally set to be optimized for putting on the muscle or building up the bone density, the earlier we can make those investments, similar to money, the earlier you can,
Yeah.
invest financially, just that compounding benefits for the future you. The future you tends to be much better off when you make those early investments. Um, so I guess, I see it through a bit of my own personal lens. I got into strength training relatively young, and I might have been a little too aggressive with it. And I think my height might have been just a little bit stunted. I was about as tall as I am now when I'm saying like 12 or 13 or something like that. And, the star center of the basketball team. And then once we got to high school, everyone got taller than me. And so I think that there needs to be, I obviously don't want to overdo it as I may have done when I was in, my late childhood, early teens. And then definitely in that 25 to, early 30s, probably early 20s to early 30s, that's like prime time for, really seeing what you can do physically, stretching yourself, seeing, you want to compete, and whether it's powerlifting or run marathons or what have you. I think that's a great time to do it. Your ability to heal and to tolerate just more substantial impact on the body. And then once you get to the late 30s, which I'm at right now, I'm realizing that I can't do all the other stuff I was doing back in the early 20s. Uh, and I won't even say it's not so much that I can't do it. I can't do it without nearly as much prep time. And there's still some things I just will completely avoid. But it's still fun and enjoyable. And that's I've adapted it to suit what I'm physically capable of doing now, and also just what's more enjoyable and entertaining for me to do at this point now. And then projecting in the future, and for people that are are older, I think that people really ought to think not just about the individual exercise, but how they can combine as many different benefits into that exercise as they can, and that's for any age. But just as you get older, the things you combine in is going to be less physically dynamic, and is going to be more. Is this a social exercise class where I get to talk to other people doing it? Is it the fitness trivia that my mom and I host, where you get to learn new things while you're doing simple exercises? I was just listening to doing some research earlier, and found that when people are mentally challenged by learning something that is physically, they have to learn something new, like dance, or if there's some sort of cognitive element to it as well, that seems to promote more neuroplasticity, more new connections with the brain, and seems to be more beneficial than just pedaling on a stationary bike and not much else to it from a cognitive standpoint. So I think especially when people get, later into life, and that, physically what you're able to do starts to become less and less, that you try to open that up by bringing the mental element into it, and thinking about how can you still be creative, how can you still be novel, and create more of these synapses, these new connections in your brain, coupled with physical exercise. And then just to also really want to echo what you're saying, is that even though earlier in life might be the best time to do strength training and build up the muscles and build up the bone density, even later in life, people can still do that. And especially for women that are in that second half of life, I think that's the one of the most commonly missed opportunities in terms of keeping yourself healthy, keeping yourself safe, is just doing as much heavy lifting as you can. And I see it so commonly. I used to be a member at Anytime Fitness, and there was this cute old lady, she's 80 something years old, and she was so adamant about her health and wellness. She did everything right except for lifting weights, and you could see it in her. She had this like frail look to her. I think she may have fractured herself once after going for having a fall, and when I talked to her, I just was always encouraging her to lift more weights. And one time I saw her lifting these, 2 pound dumbbells, doing these bicep curls, and I think, all right, that's progress, and hopefully we can build up to maybe some more compound exercises and some heavier lifting. But I think that especially in any seniors or any children of seniors in here that have parents, and especially mothers that are not doing any strength training, that is, yeah, one of the most important things to really, really emphasize is there's so many different wonderful benefits that come from it.
I actually just wanted to add to that. That's something that I've been searching for is this what is the perfect combination of various exercises that you can get all the benefits without spending too much time on various different things. So I would say yoga meets some of those requirements in terms of using body weight to build strength. At the same time,
Hmm.
it involves some cardio because you're moving into and out of different positions and your heart rate becomes more elevated. There's, of course, stretching and balance involved in it also. And then there's also the breathing meditation. So it's as complete a package as you can get within one exercise, one type of exercise. If you can build more muscles from regular gym lifting weights than you can with just yoga. So your body's going to look different if you're just really good at yoga versus if you've been lifting weights and doing yoga.
Right.
So, do you have any thoughts on what would be the a perfect something that you can do every day that combines everything? Like my answer to that was kind of yoga, but what would yours be?
That's a really good question. And as soon as you started saying that, I started thinking to myself, what is that? If there's, one thing that someone could just check off as much as they can to the list of things that are, beneficial from an exercise standpoint. If there was some type of group exercise in a nature setting where there's some type of like kind of cross training in a nature setting with a group of people where maybe they're doing some push-ups, some lunges, some different body weight exercises that are more of the whole body and not lighter 2 pound dumbbell equivalents. Yes, incorporating that, some type of maybe as a part of the warm up or the cool down, a deep breathing, meditative type practice with some stretching as a part of the warm up and the cool down. And something and always where there's something novel, where maybe it's
Mm.
a boot camp or someone's guiding it, and maybe they have some things where they done before where they're going to see the progress and they appreciate that, but also something that's going to be novel where they're challenging their body to coordinate or balance or learn something new throughout the process. I think something
Mm.
along those lines. Oh, and with a boot camp instructor that can make them laugh too throughout the process a couple times. I think that would
Right.
be I think something along those lines would be a pretty good, well-encompassing package for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was also going to say one of the things that is very, I think, very beneficial about Qigong and dance is that it involves a lot of coordination
Hmm.
to rhythm, and that's also quite sociable and quite fun. And it brings in that element of being in the rhythm with other people, which has its own other set of benefits that I think doing something that's non-rhythmic doesn't always lead to that. I think you've done quite a lot of work in the past about dancing, to remember. You
I
want to talk a
remember.
bit about that?
Yeah, so we have group program, a community event called Dance to Remember, and it's designed to be almost like an equivalent the walk to end Alzheimer's, but kind of just a bit of a nuanced way of thinking about it, where instead of focusing on the negative and the Alzheimer's and thinking about more about the positive, the memories and the things that you care about, and how dancing is one form of exercise and incorporates a lot of different things that are good for the brain, the social aspect, you're learning different steps, so there's that cognitive aspect of it. It's dynamic, it incorporates balance, it can get the heart rate up a little bit, and for a lot of people it's fun
Mm-hmm.
too. So there's a lot of different brain benefits, and there's some research indicating that people that report dancing as their number one form of physical activity, that they have the lowest rates of developing dementia. So there's this whole concept of, perhaps instead of thinking about, or instead of walking to end Alzheimer's, which most Alzheimer's, in my opinion, will never, truly end. It's just kind of one of those things where if you live long enough, and there's a lot of people on this planet, that there's going to people that are going to develop it, just like arthritis, or just like, any other condition that's associated with old age. But to minimize the risk of developing that, and to hold on to memories that matter most, as best we can, by doing things that are both good in terms of exercise, and also enjoyable, and really finding that overlap between the two of, what's enjoyable and what's healthy for you. There's a whole concept behind the event, and we even had another kind of subsidiary of that, just an individual dance program, where sometimes they would dance, and then they would ask their partners questions and try to remember those nuances about their partner at the end of the dance class. So it's just trying to, yeah, kill multiple birds with one stone, in terms of getting as many brain benefits as possible. And yeah, I hope we get those programs up and running again. I know I've spoken with some communities around here in Michigan, but unfortunately, lots of turnover in the staffing at these communities kind of has put a hamper on some of the places we were hoping to do it at. But yeah, hopefully do get that going again. So Jenny, for
Yeah.
you, the different types of exercises that you've done, can you, and this is subjective, but if you had to pick, any particular point in your life where you started a new or different type of exercise, and you associated improved cognition with it, like what would you say for you seemed to elicit the most amount of brain benefits?
I'm having a tough time choosing between two. One is lifting weights. That definitely helped a lot, and that's more recent.
Okay.
But earlier, Qigong really helped too.
Okay.
So I was able to regulate my emotions and think more clearly when I was doing Qigong regularly.
Hmm.
Much before that, yoga did that for me too. So I think it's not really easy to say it's only one, but anything new that you start which challenges you a certain way tends to have that effect. It seems, at least on me. What about you?
I agree. I'm in the same boat. So yeah, I started doing lifting with my dad at a pretty young age, and initially it was great. Like there was definitely yeah, this different type of energy, and I felt like there's good that was happening from it, for sure. I think perhaps a good portion of that might have been just, building up strength and size, and just, in terms of confidence, in terms of um, how I felt about myself. I think there were, good amount of brain benefits initially, and then later on, I felt like it was almost to a detriment, that my mind was so
Mm,
focused on my body, and it wasn't focused enough on outside my body and connecting with other people, and the synergy with all the other things that life has to offer. And then I did a bodybuilding show, an all natural show. The main reason was just to exhaust myself with it, to pour myself into that world, and see what kind of cool physique I could achieve. And then once I was done with it, be able to, like, okay, I'm done being a gym rat for a bit. I'm gonna, open myself up to explore some other things. And then I got into yoga, and that was the next best thing that I had done. It's like it
mm,
rewired my mind to, instead of thinking of like all, because prior to that I felt like all I could do was resist things, just resist and fight, and just keep both physically and mentally, and it just wasn't healthy. And then when I learned to
mm.
just breathe, to be more, I felt like this physical flexibility. I feel like I got more mentally flexible than I did physically flexible from doing yoga,
Right.
and that was something that I really needed. I was able to just be more accepting of different social dynamics or situations, just breathe through things more, and so that for maybe a couple months was a really good thing. And then after that, I felt like the more yoga I did, it was diminishing returns. Um,
Mm,
and I'd say as of recently, if it's something I haven't done for a while, if I haven't gone for a jog for a while, and I go for a jog, it's like I'll feel this new wave of energy and focus and energy, and zeal and aptitude. And as of lately, I've been doing more high intensity interval training, whether it's sprints, or whether it's like these leaping lunges, or just like any type of explosive activity that I can do, and then wait, maybe a minute or so before doing another set. And I think just the novelty is just kind of going from one thing to another, and seeing your improvement, I think is motivating, and just I think there's brain benefits in that, and then just the pure novelty aspect of it, where you're just creating new connections in the brain, learning to think about exercise in a new way.
Right. Actually, this reminds me, there was a biohacker I listened to maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Some podcast which was talking about how if your body is starting to find something too easy, you have to switch it up, because you're
Okay.
just not getting the same benefits anymore. So I
Uh-huh.
think a nice variety will actually help, just like we want a rainbow of colors on our plate. We want a variety of exercise also that will stimulate us in different ways and
Uh-huh.
challenge different muscle groups, different aspects of our coordination, balance, all sorts of abilities that we have physically.
Mm-hmm.
So I really liked what he said about you got to switch it up to keep challenging your body. Um, the other element is about exercise is that you have to like it to do it.
Right.
So there are quite a lot of people that I happen to know who do not like the gym. They just don't like entering gyms at all. So to them, I say, why don't you take a walk with your friend? Why don't you join a dance class or any of these other things that you might like that
Uh-huh.
don't necessarily involve a treadmill? Or I think treadmills, particularly, like a lot of people find them so boring, and myself included. For a long time, I found them boring.
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
I'm right there with you. I would not want to spend much time on a treadmill at all.
Right. And it doesn't really do much. I think it helps you get enough cardio if you're listening to a podcast as you're walking or running on a treadmill. It's a
Mm-hmm.
great way to kind of get the cardio minutes in without like mentally being engaged with the activity.
Right.
Similarly, I'd say ellipticals are, I would say, a more joint friendly version of cardio exercise that you can do low impact. So I think these help with getting just one benefit that is just cardio, getting it in. It's better than nothing for sure,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not the kind of challenge rainbow on a plate type of ideal that we are looking at or we're talking about.
Right. Yeah, and that kind of comes back to an initial point. I started off as saying, thinking big picture about all these things, including exercise. And, a lot of people say, oh, I walk, half an hour a day, 5 days a week. Like I'm doing great with my exercise. And, to me, that's the equivalent of someone saying like, I eat broccoli and nothing else. Like, it's like I've got a great
Right.
diet. Like broccoli's good, walking's good, but there's so much more. There's so many more nutrients you need from your
Yeah.
exercise and from your nutrition. I
Right.
I've been doing some research lately, and just really analyzing the nuances of aerobic versus weight training, these different types of exercise. And it seems like strength training is particularly beneficial at executive functioning, while cardiovascular is more likely to boost your memory and your learning capability. And it's like these are two very important things to have, and you wouldn't want just one or the other. You don't want just vitamin C and not vitamin B. You want all the different nutrients and all these different benefits and hormones that we can get by getting our lifestyle right. So uh, yeah.
I observed something. It's been maybe a couple of months that I've noticed that when I'm regularly doing my strength training, I'm able to not lose my cool. As I mean, you may
Okay.
not know this, but I tend to lose it a lot. Like my temper is.
Janani, really?
Well, it is like it depends on the trigger. There are people who've known me for years and they've never seen me angry. So it's only certain people, certain triggers, certain situations. But even those situations, I am able to handle them with a lot more of a relaxed, accepting approach if I'm doing my weights. And I think part of that is that when you have excess energy floating around in your system,
Hmm.
you tend to believe that you want to exert that control over everything. And when it doesn't go your way, you have more energy to push against it. So then you lose it. And it's a great way of wasting energy. If you want to get angry, it's like the best way to emotionally drain yourself. I mean, I'm
Okay.
saying this in like partly jest, but it's true. The days that you're emotionally overactivated, you're more likely to be exhausted, and not in a happy way, not in a good way, like you've done a lot of exercise and now you're like really tired and ready to sleep well. It's more exhausted in this like a drained way, right?
Hmm.
But I noticed that the weights, because I have all this energy, the weights tend to balance me out in a way that I don't have that extra energy to push and control. And so I have just about enough energy to relax and accept the flow of things, right? I just thought I'd add that in because there are lots of people who I know who have a lot of frustration in their lives. They gravitate towards extremely intense exercise. And
Hmm.
I personally understand that now. I see why they do it.
Okay. Yeah, helps. It's a
Have you
great
ever
venting.
experienced something like this?
You know, yesterday there was something I was quite upset about, and it's just not in my nature to get very upset that often. And but it happened yesterday, and yeah, I think one of the best things I did was just get outside and did some strength training, some of that high intensity interval training with explosive push-ups and pull-ups, and then yeah, after doing that for a bit, it was like I feel like I'd vented some of that frustration and, partly just like I just, like you said, just didn't have as much of that, energy to put into being angry about whatever it was.
Okay.
And so, and that definitely corresponds to some of the research too, showing that when that strength training in particular, it's great for executive functioning, like our ability to tap into all the different mental processes we have to accomplish a
Mhm.
complicated challenge or goal, but also at inhibition. So, not
Mhm.
getting angered or flustered or not, doing something that you probably shouldn't do, but in the moment you kind of want to. It seems like it's particularly beneficial at that. So I, I
Yeah, that's
I
good.
presume that yeah. Uh, so maybe we can start transitioning into talking about nutrition, 'cause that was
Food, yeah.
another topic we have. Um, maybe we just come back to the. It's like always starting off with the big picture here. So big picture, where do you feel like most people are missing out the most when it comes to nutrition, and how do you think they should think about their nutrition on a more regular basis?
So one of the things that I observe in many restaurants or any place that you go where you're not the one who's making the food is there's a lot more cheaper carbohydrate based food than vegetables. Fresh produce is more expensive, so they will call it. They may give it a name like XYZ based pasta, and then
Mm-hmm.
there'll be like two or three pieces of that vegetable, and most of it is just the noodles with
Uh-huh.
some cheese, right? So this is a pattern that I observe wherever you go out to eat, unless it's specializes in some niche type of restaurants. They will not give you the vegetables if it's relatively cheap food. They're not going to give you vegetables for that, especially fresh stuff. And I think this is something that when you look at the socioeconomic distribution of diseases, you look also at the availability of reliable, frequent, like you need to have these vegetables every day, various types of
Mm-hmm.
vegetables, a variety of them. And if you're not going to get them more than once or twice a week, and also in such small quantities, you're going to miss out on a lot of. So there are people who look large, which is another way of saying overnourished, but they are actually malnourished because they're not
Right.
getting the food, what they actually need, what the body needs. They're not getting that. They're
Mm-hmm.
getting an overload of carbs or an overload of fats, but they're not getting the fiber and the minerals and the vitamins. So this is, I think, a really big gap in. It's a public health problem, um, but I think this is something that is important to kind of throw some light on.
I think it's a very important thing to put light on. I think it's a very important distinction that you made. I remember back when I was in chiropractic school and learning about doctor's notes, and when we read it and it says, this patient is well nourished, like that, it's almost like a cute way of saying they're kind of fluffy. They're not
Right.
starving. They've got some some fat reserves. And I think that's brilliantly said, Janani. I've not heard that pointed out before, is that they're probably malnourished. They're probably missing out on a lot of the important nutrients and minerals. And yes, they're not starving. They've got some reserves, which probably better that than not eating at all and starving to death. But still not properly nourished. Well nourished, I don't think is a healthy way to put that description for someone that's overweight and not getting the nutrients they need to really thrive. And I think that'd be an important thing to start correcting in the way that doctors are communicating about their patients. Um, Particularly as it pertains to brain health, the mind diet has grown and gotten a good amount of attention lately. The Mediterranean intervention for neurodegenerative delay. What are your thoughts on that diet as it pertains to brain health? Do you think it is the best type of diet for it? And if not, how would you modify it?
Okay, so I have some notes on this, so I'm just gonna kind of go over it. So the Mind diet is a combination diet of the DASH diet, which is the dietary approaches to stop hypertension, combined with the Mediterranean diet. And so they've tried to put together the best of what's already established for hypertension, with things that have been scientifically shown to be neuroprotective. So, for example, they say specifically have more berries, but they're not going to talk about fruits in general because fruits in general haven't been studied the way that berries have with respect to neuroprotectiveness. So you can see just with that there are going to be some severe limitations to this proposed diet, just in the way that it's not comprehensive. It hasn't really looked at the nutrition benefits of various other fruits or various other. It doesn't, for example, evaluate coffee or tea. It doesn't really talk about wine. It talks about wine, but in a way that has now been shown is not true. So they recommend in the Mind diet to have not more than 1 glass of wine if you're a woman and 2 for a man. But recent studies have shown that even that 1 glass or 2 are not worth the toxicity that it brings to your liver and the damage that it does to your arteries. So there's a bunch of things that I think they should update if they're going to continue to propose it as the diet for preventing neurodegenerative delay. So at the same time, though, I think it's a really good framework to look at what are the simple do's and don'ts. So in the Mind diet, there's a proposed list of 10 do's and 5 don'ts. So I'll just read the do's. It says green leafy vegetables 6 or more times a week, other vegetables 7 times a week, beans 4 times a week, berries twice a week, 2 servings per week, nuts 5 servings per week, poultry twice a week. So what happens to vegans here, right? Fatty fish, again, what happens to vegans and vegetarians? Olive oil, whole grains 3 servings per day, which I would contest, but and also wine, which we already covered. So these are the do's, and then the don'ts include red meat, cheese, pastries and sweets, fried foods, butter and margarine. So these are the ones that they say try not to have at all, and if you're going to limit it in a very severe way. So you can see from just these guidelines that it doesn't cover things like, so clinically many people have observed that when you get off wheat, you can eliminate brain fog. This has happened to many people before. They don't talk about wheat. They don't talk about gluten. And there's another book called Grain Brain, I think, which talks about how we overconsume grains, that we're not able to function as optimally with too much grain. So I think that while it gives you a nice place to start, if you go too deep into the details and follow it to the letter, it may not be the best for you. And I think this brings me to the idea of how some things don't work for some people. And you need to find out what works for your body. For example, chocolate has been shown to be very high in protective polyphenols. But dark chocolate or any type of chocolate can actually really irritate certain people's system,
Okay.
like their bodies. Similarly, wine can actually, I've known at least 4 or 5 people in separate areas where a wine or any alcohol immediately brings out like a lot of inflammation and in their reaction in their body.
Right.
And so these kinds of things are more individual. It may not affect everyone that way.
Hmm.
But if it affects you, and then you see this recommendation to have that one glass of wine a day, and then you say, oh, but I need to preserve my brain, so I need to have my wine, even though it has all these other effects. You
Uh-huh.
got to kind of use a little bit of discretion and
Right.
understand how to personalize it so it's appropriate for you. If
Hmm.
you're a vegan, you're not going to have poultry, right?
Hmm.
You're going to find other ways. I mean, I'm disappointed that they don't have they have beans only 4 times a week. Legumes are a great source of protein and fiber. They
Uh-huh.
have so many other nutrients like calcium, iron, all kinds of things. They should be there in larger quantities, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
But then there are people where it just doesn't suit them. Beans, peas, they just give gas. And so they're like, oh, I better stay away from that stuff. Right.
Yeah. I
So not realizing that you need to consume the beans with some spices cooked in the right fats, and you need it to be it's not like, I think what happens with nutrition as a subject is people break down the foods into their um, macro and micronutrients, and they don't look at the
uh-huh.
food as a whole. And
Right.
the way that, say, for example, people got crazy about turmeric a while ago. I think it became a big fad. I think people still believe that it's like so amazing to take curcumin or turmeric capsules and stuff. But the way that it is used in real food is it's added as a little bit, like a little pinch, to a larger meal with some black pepper in the heat, in the oil, in some water. Like there's a lot of context to that. And it's
Right.
eaten as part of a meal. That's more likely to be absorbed properly in your body than
Hmm.
a capsule, which has no context.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, then they started adding black pepper to the capsules. But I mean, do you see that it's still very limited when you look at it like that? It's very reductionist as an approach. I think that we need to look at it more from a natural, like, what are the traditional food? So Mediterranean has a very good reputation, but
Hmm.
there are also other traditions that, like Mexican or Indian, they also have a long-standing tradition of a very balanced and diverse type of way of eating. So it
Hmm.
doesn't have to be Mediterranean. If you're sitting in India, you're not going to go and eat Mediterranean food. Just eat
Right.
what's here locally available, but use your common sense. And when they have the banana leaf, the traditional way of eating, the top
Uh-huh.
half of the leaf is dedicated to all the vegetables and salads and things like that on top. And then the bottom half is more to do with the carbs, and there's more rice, different types of rice, and a little bit of maybe chips and fried items, and all those other things come in the bottom, including
Hmm.
the sweets.
Hmm.
So I've seen in a lot of events, people would just ignore the top half. They would just not eat from the top half, right?
Right.
They're all about the bottom. And that's not the way that traditionally we're supposed to be eating, right? And if you look at the principles, will be the same whether it's Mediterranean or South Indian. But you need to be well informed enough to make the right choices and eat it as it's meant to be. Like, don't take the pizza out of a 5 course meal and say they didn't have the salad and the soup and stuff to start with. They're just going to focus
Right.
only on pizza. That's not a
Right.
meal. That's a
Right.
one part of a 5 course meal, right?
Right.
So context matters.
So you bring another really good point here, and it, it seems like you're getting at that people need to employ critical thinking. They need to pay attention to what works for their body, what doesn't work for their body, and not just take any sort of prepackaged program, the Mind Diet, the Mediterranean diet, any other type of, fad, idea, concept around nutrition for brain health. Um, I feel like most people, that's just not how they're initially wired. I mean, I think they can change, but I feel like there's almost this massive shift in how people think about their nutrition. that needs to change from, you know, a clickbaity type of approach to brain health. You know, eat these three foods and your brain power will explode, and instead shift to based off what I'm currently doing and what I should be doing. What are these next steps that I can personally take? And how can I, you know, along the way reflect as to is this working? Is this not working? I feel like that's the thing that would be most beneficial, but that does require you know, mental effort, and it's not as easy as taking a supplement. It's not as easy as just like, oh, blueberries or turmeric capsules. It's so I feel like that's kind of the challenge that we're up against, and really getting people. It's almost like they really have to first prioritize their own brain health, and then start consuming content like this, where they're encouraged to really, you know, employ that critical self-analysis as they, you know, approach their nutrition. I know in my story, it's I've tried all sorts of different diets. I've done carnivore, I've done vegan, I've done autoimmune protocol. I've really bounced around quite a bit, some extreme different types of diet. And I found that yeah, just some basic concepts of avoiding the refined carbohydrates. That's definitely very important for my cognitive optimization. Not eating too much before bed is very important.
Mm.
And I do feel that I've been noticing probably even a bit more lately is that for fatty foods that having them sourced from a high quality whether animal product, just higher quality wherever it's sourced from. The grass-fed butter to me, I do notice a bit of a difference in that when I have the regular conventionally raised cows and the butter sourced from them. So these are kind of some of the big picture, but otherwise, if I'm eating healthy or I'm eating more of a organic type nose to tail carnivore diet, or if I'm eating purely vegan, but it's still, you know, very heavy on the leafy greens, and I'm making sure I'm getting the protein and the vitamin B12, and I'm doing, you know, checking all those things off that I feel roughly about the same, and that's just for me personally. When I watch these videos on YouTube about the vegan diet, and it's just littered with all these people that like, oh, vegan's great for me. Why isn't the WHO and everyone else like and saying that everyone needs to do vegan? And I see the same thing on the flip side for the carnivore diet. It's like, man, I had all these problems at a carnivore, and now they're poof gone. Like, why isn't this, you know, mainstream? Why isn't everyone doing this? Is the way to go? And I really feel that if again people take that step back, get that big picture perspective on nutrition, that there's no one this diet for everyone, that this approach, this supplement is number one for everyone, but more, you know, based off what I'm already currently doing, what I can be doing, and what are those next best steps where I can sustainably start implementing some habits that are going to day in, day out have my brain functioning better. That's that critical thinking that I hope we can and this podcast and other people that are having a bigger influence that we are can really start to advocate on that behalf, and not just have people thinking blueberries. I had my blueberries. I'm good. I took care of my brain today.
Right.
Uh,
No, I think there are several stages to this. There's people who intend well towards their body. They actually want to be conscious. They want to make good decisions. And then they source their information with from whatever trends that are going on around them. They're not really reading too much more. And I think that's where you and I and people like us need to really step up and do a better job at science communication, and to kind of look at what's there in the literature, what's there traditionally, and how has this information been tested on people observationally over generations in different parts of the world, and what have been like, for example, is there a part of the world that we know of that doesn't have as high a rate of Alzheimer's as like say other parts, and what are they doing differently? Right. I mean, it doesn't have to be just food and exercise. It could also be the social structure. It could be a whole bunch of other things. But the Blue Zones study was kind of based on this. Where do people live the longest in a healthy way? They hit their hundreds without feeling the detriment of age as much, and they're also happier in those regions. So other studies like that, which kind of show, okay, the incidence of Alzheimer's in this region was close to nothing until this point, and then there was a massive cultural shift. All of these changes happened, and now look, the rates of Alzheimer's, diabetes, heart disease, all of these are going up. So what is it that they used to do that was working that now they're not doing anymore? So these are the ways that we can investigate as people from the more scientific side of things, that we can look at it, study them, and then bring those findings to the public and educate them on what are the details. And so this is from the outside. And then the other aspect is from the inside of how do I feel? Like, am I able to get further into my book, like this really dense book I'm reading, without effort, and suddenly just understand everything that this author's trying to say after I did XYZ, or I ate this, or I didn't eat that, right? So how much of this self-awareness are we building in? I mean, how much of that is even encouraged by the medical professionals? I think it's not really considered as important. It's not emphasized the way that I would say it needs to be emphasized. We need to be aware of ourselves. How do we feel? And what is changing the way we feel? How much of our own behavior has that impact on our the way we are, brain health or otherwise, any other type of health also? What are the factors that influence us? And can we use a method to track that so that we can eliminate the things that are not suiting us and increase the things that seem to do a lot of good for us?
Yeah, that's a very, very logical, well-rounded approach to thinking that hopefully gets implemented much more so. What about you personally? Have you made any shifts in your diet that you can really pinpoint? Like, when I did that, I really noticed that I was on the point more. My cognitive aptitude definitely had a boost.
There have been things that I've done, but they're not really related to nutrition. I'd say the sleep, for example, is
Okay.
just, yeah, I think if I'm not getting enough sleep, my brain just doesn't work properly. So
Uh-huh.
uh, that's where I've seen the most drastic shift between, yep, I'm on point. I can do so many things so well without any effort, without having to try, versus, oh my God, I can barely spell my name. You know? So, I mean, it depends on how much sleep deprivation you've had. So I think sleep has been that way for me. I don't think that food has made such a big. Okay, one thing I can say, when I quit sugar, which I did, I think 2018, I think I quit
Hmm.
sugar.
Hmm.
Um, there was a drastic shift for me at that point.
Hmm.
In terms of my overall health, as well as, and it's not just sugar as white refined sugar, but if when I quit high glycemic foods, I think that really helped me in my overall health, and definitely my brain became clearer.
100%. I feel like for me, I've cut out the sugars quite a while ago, and if I were to ever splurge or just have a bit more, I would definitely for an hour or two I would notice the difference. And I think for me, staying on top of hydration is something that maybe over the past several months or so, I've been just a bit more acutely aware of that, and not eating too much before going to bed. But kind of similar to you, I feel like my diet is pretty well rounded. I think I'm just in my DNA, I'm relatively adaptable to a good number of different foods as long as they're not refined and doesn't have is not going to spike my blood sugar. I have also noticed that certain meats with preservatives can, throw me for a whirlwind and cause some compromise. But for the most part, I personally don't feel like for me that there's a massive opportunity to elevate my cognition through nutrition, through a new supplement or new food or new type of meal planning. I feel like for me, it's similar to you that continuing to refine my sleep, which I've been doing better with lately. I think it was our brain chat we had a couple months ago. I mentioned that my
Mhm.
greatest opportunity for improvement was sleep, and definitely this past week I've been doing better, and I've been feeling the difference. I've been really enjoying it. But yeah, I feel like for me it's more novelty, maybe around the social element and refining the sleep. I get the sense that what I've been noticing the past several a couple months here that seems to, when those fluctuate, that affects my cognition the most.
Mhm. Yeah. Yes, the
Yeah.
social element is quite a big one. I think that when we have stimulating conversations, it does a lot more for the brain than uh, what did you have for breakfast? I mean, so long as it's not like in the red zone of the things you shouldn't be doing. But yeah, these other elements really play into it. Sleep, social element, making sure that you laugh enough. Can you make sure that you laugh? Sounds kind of a serious way to say that you need humor in your life.
You ever do laughter yoga?
I've tried it. I've seen it. So right next to the school bus stop, there was a laughter yoga club that would meet right around the time that we were getting on the bus,
Hmm.
and we'd watch these seniors kind of, yeah, have a fun time with it. I've I don't think it's my thing, but I think those who enjoy it, it's got a lot of benefits.
Yeah, I've done it once or twice. No, I've done it a handful of times. The first one or two times I did it, it was a cool experience. I had fun with it, and then after that, it just seemed, yeah, it wasn't my thing either. But I like the concept behind it, and as you said, for some people that get benefit from it, it's fantastic. Um, what I'd like to start kind of, bringing this thing to a close here. So in terms of final thoughts around the nutrition or exercise or the synergy between them, what are some key points that you like to leave people with?
Um, so one of the things that really does help in my experience, both for myself and for people who I've worked with their autoimmune conditions, is that when you do exercise in a fasted state, especially zone two exercise, it tends to really boost your clarity, boost your energy levels for the rest of the day. I think that is partly because you're already done with blood glucose and glycogen, and you've moved on to fat burning, and that tends to offer more steady energy because you have all that fat that you can burn without running out too easily. And I think that offers a certain sharpness to the brain. Do you have any experience with that, or do you have anything to add to that?
Around zone two or exercising in a fasted state?
Mm-hmm.
Mm, I guess I think it's maybe on a person by person basis. And me personally, getting I say light exercise for me personally and a fasted state, I can see benefit to, but some like the high intensity interval training or sprinting, like that stuff, I don't think I would do too well in a fasted state. I think it depends on the type of exercise and the goal that you want to get from it. If you want a very consistent, streamlined energy and focus and then I could see some more light to moderate intensity in a fasted state. I could see that being really good. But if you really want to alter your physiology in a way that's going to secrete more human growth hormone and maybe even BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor, it seems like the more moderate to high intensity exercise is more associated with that. So I guess it depends on your goal and variety. I mean, I think maybe one day you really go hard and you've eaten and you've got some more glycogen, some more energy to push yourself through a more intense workout, and then an alternating day where the muscles are recovering. And I think on those days it could be great to, as you're mentioning, the zone two where it's more of a fasted state and more of a light to moderate intensity.
Have you ever tried high intensity with in a fasted state? Have you tried it?
I yes, I have.
Okay, and it didn't work out well for you.
It, definitely good amount of fatigue. Yeah, just not the exercise. I'm not don't have the strength, don't have the ability to do what I normally can, and then afterwards, I just feel maybe it's just me personally, but I do feel more fatigued. I remember when I was in chiropractic school and I would do that, I would feel yeah, just I couldn't keep up in class quite as well as when I had done a intense exercise after having eaten or not being in the fasted state.
Just to clarify, we don't even have to include this if you don't want, but do you know your body fat percentage?
I don't know for
Is
sure. I
it
had
particularly low?
it's on the lower side. Yeah, I tend
Yeah,
to
that's
run more
probably
lean.
why. No, and that's
It
probably
could
why.
be. Yeah.
I mean, that's at least the way that I'm thinking about it is if you've already got a low body fat percentage, your body is going to resist doing more on that state if you've already reached that perspective. But if you're looking at people who have adequate fat storage, then I think their reaction may be different. At least because this is what I've seen multiple times with whoever, all my clients. So when they come to me, they're generally, many of them are above the normal weight level. So I think for them, they actually feel the energy in a different way. So yeah, it's possible that it just works differently for different people, but I just wanted to understand the mechanism and what might be contributing to that difference.
I think it's a
You
really
know?
good point. And that's something because I've tried just fasting in general. If I fast for a day, a couple days, what have you, maybe sometimes there's novelty, there's variety, and my physiology is getting shifted around, but I don't feel the benefits like a lot of other people report when they do fasting, like a lot of research
Mm,
shows. And I presume that a lot of that research is done on people that might have, higher, fat stores to begin with,
that
where
percentage,
yeah, exactly. So for
right?
me, I just think my metabolism, I tend to have more of that ectomorph, just naturally run more lean. And I think that the fasting and depleting someone who's already lower on fat and reserves is not as beneficial as the people that do have it. So I'm right there with you.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, so I would like to ask you the same question. Do you see a place where food and exercise can offer more synergy, like together?
I just trying to put myself in the shoes of the people that are trying to really want to make improvements in their health, their wellness, their um, just really thinking about as you said, I think synergy is a great word, and just any one thing, and just always coming back to the big picture, and figuring out the ways where that synergy can be had, and doing it in a way that's individualized. I think that's where people are going to be really find the most fruitful improvements is. Not focusing on that one tiny piece of the puzzle, but they focus on the big picture. They address all these different things, not just the nutrition and exercise, but as we talked about earlier, the sleep and all these other lifestyle components. And they keep reflecting, keep paying attention. Did this help me? Did this serve it well? Yes. Okay, I'm going to keep on
Yeah.
doing that. And after you implemented that habit, what's that next thing that's going to move me forward? And to keep doing that. And that's where I see that this incredible synergy where people can just really surprise themselves at what they're able to do and considering what they've were not capable of doing in the past, and they're able to bring it into their life in the future. I really hope that more people can adopt that approach, that mindset, and not just the focus on the blueberries or the turmeric or the coconut oil or any one fad of the month of the year, and just prioritize their self-awareness over fads, which is it seems to be much more the opposite. I think that's the key for most people to find that synergy that we're talking about. I'm going to give you a guess. What do you think I was going to ask you?
The Gofi. Yes.
Yep, yep.
Okay.
We're getting to know
Um,
each other.
uh, why did you go first? I don't really know.
If I feel like it was sleep, and I feel like it another week or two of solidifying some of these new habits I've started around sleep would be good. And which was at 8:30, I'm no more eating, no more screen time, give myself at least an hour to and I surprised myself. Like at 8:30, I'm like, man, I'm wired. I got this energy. I should be doing computer work. I should be doing stuff. I'm hungry. I should be. And then I just like I made that rule, and it's like even at 8:30, I'm energized, but by 9 o'clock, I'm like, okay, all right, this like whole no screen thing, no stimulation. It's like I think it's working. I'm getting tired, and so that's been really good. I
Mhm.
think the one of the next things I'm working on is just kind of a me personally is the air quality. My house, I live in the basement, it's finished, and I rent out the upstairs like a duplex, so I don't get much airflow into here. So I'm really trying to figure out the best ways to improve the air quality in this basement. So I'm
Mhm.
getting some new air filters and probably get some more snake plants. And so that's up there. But I think number one ahead of that, after I solidify this new sleep habit, is to get back more into powerlifting or heavy lifting. It's been quite a while since I've done that. And I think that
Mm,
I'm due for a boost in my HGH, the human growth hormone, and I think that there's that executive functioning, some of these other things that we've talked about when it comes to strength training that I haven't really been getting as much as I can out of that aspect of exercise. I do a good amount of
mm,
biking, I do lots of walking. My heart rate is, I get a low to moderate amount of exercise or cardiovascular exercise throughout the day, but I think my strength training is not that ratio, that macro of cardio to strength training is not as leaning into the strength training as it should. So probably within the next
mm.
couple of weeks, I'm planning to get back into that.
Okay, so my go fee would be uh it's not one thing. I think I've been having too much broccoli, like you said, too much of the cardio, but not enough of the weights. I have the same problem. I need to make time and just focus on getting that done, the weights, even if it means no cardio for that day. If I don't have the time, that's okay. So just do the weights. The other thing that I've been trying to do, and I think it's helped me a lot, is to move a little bit more into a creative zone. So, trying to get more involved in things like music or writing really tends to open my mind out because I feel like there's a lot of, as we get older, there's a lot of habits and patterns in our minds that tend to kind of solidify and feel a bit rigid. And over the last year or so, I've been trying to move out of those ruts into more open spaces, observing as things are rather than how I think they should be. And I think that clarity comes in more clearly when I'm doing something creative, that I don't make assumptions based on how I think things should be. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think
Okay.
that's awesome. I I I fall in that category too. I think just being more present and trying to have a less judgmental, less um yeah, just kind of more open, accepting, appreciating, things for the way that they are. I think that would
Mm-hmm.
benefit me as well, and probably a lot of people in general.
Mm-hmm. It would be really cool if the people who watch this are able to leave their go fees in the comments because that will help us kind of get a sense of what they feel about their exercise, their food, and other aspects of their brain health and what they think. Maybe other people are going through similar things with too much cardio, not enough weights. Maybe it's a very general and prevalent problem. We would get to know about that if they could tell us and share what they feel as maybe their go fee until next time they see our next podcast. So
Yeah,
be good to
def
tune into what they feel.
yeah, absolutely. Definitely love to see their GOFI greatest opportunity for improvement pertaining to your health, particularly your brain health. Love to see those in the comments, as well as the GOFI for this podcast here, these brain chats. Any particular topics you'd like us to touch on, or any formatting, anything that we can do that's gonna better help you. Please do let us know. All right.
Awesome.
All
Great.
right. Well, yeah, thanks for joining in, everyone. It was a really awesome chat here, and we look forward to having our next one here and joining you guys in the comments below.